Respected scholars, dear brothers and sisters, and all PSG families, Assalamu alaikum. I'll never forget the day in 4th grade when we were all eating lunch inside the classroom. Suddenly, this boy raises his hand and asks the teacher, "Shouldn't we hate Muslims because they're terrorists?" At that moment, I found myself burst into tears. I was just so embarrassed and heartbroken. And I thought to myself, is this what people think of the religion of peace? Not knowing that I was from Pakistan, 2 girls sincerely approached me and they go, "It's okay, Zainab, don't worry. I'm pretty sure he was only talking about the Pakistani Muslims anyway." As funny as this might be, although my topic today is about the religion of Islam, so many religions, cultures, and ethnicities are being stigmatized in today's world, and we need to address that. Brothers and sisters, my name is Zainab Abbas, and I'm a 13-year-old American Muslim coming from the Bay Area. So, show me your hands if any of you have ever been discriminated because of your belief in Islam, or have even gotten negative comments on your name, or even got stares as if you're doing something wrong. Please raise your hand. Okay, so I can see a number of hands from the audience, and as many of us are Muslims living in America, there's a major problem that the majority of us face. Society views us differently, and although there are some positive views of Islam by non-Muslims, there are still many negatives. The negative connotation of Muslims viewed by a portion of society supported by the fear of the foreign is known as Islamophobia. This form of racism has risen since the events of 9/11, where all Muslims had suddenly started to be labeled as terrorists. Have you ever wondered why it's called 9/11? The anti-Muslim think tanks planned way ahead in time. They purposely removed the year 2001 from 9/11 so that Islamophobic feelings stay fresh in people's minds. In fact, I call it a planned genocide of Islamic ideology. Muslims across the US, even those who have lived their whole lives here, are easily seen as foreign, especially when displaying forms of other types of identity, like wearing the hijab or having a full beard. They can be perceived as a threat to Western identity and way of life. Islamophobes often label Muslims who have fallen to Western identity as good or moderate, whilst those who resist the Western cultural dominance as bad or extremist. Islamophobia is a type of stigma. In other words, it is looked down upon by some people. However, not only are Muslims facing the judgment by the outside community, but the sad part is that many are also stigmatized within their own Muslim communities in the United States or abroad. What I mean by this is that too often we ostracize our brothers and sisters in Islam just because they aren't perfect. When it seems like the whole world is against you for being a Muslim, you shouldn't be turned away from your community due to shortcomings in your modesty, your prayers, or your actions. In effect, as brothers and sisters, instead of hating on one another, we need to help one another. Well, who are the Islamophobes, and what negative changes are they bringing? There's a term known as the Islamophobic industry, which refers to a large network of politicians, public figures, media outlets, policymakers, and just ordinary people in general that influence the Islamophobic conversation, usually for some economic or political gain. The industry influences public opinion, which in turn can influence politics, such as voting patterns during elections. And a clear example of this was shown through our current president, Mr. Trump, who continuously criticized Muslims primarily to gain favors from previous Islamophobes, which created an anti-Muslim environment. Let's just read one of his tweets. On June 12, 2016, Donald Trump posted, "Is President Obama going to finally mention the words radical Islamic terrorism? If he doesn't, he should immediately resign in disgrace." I mean, this is unacceptable. And even after being elected, if any unusual incident occurred, Donald Trump, without knowing the facts, tended to tweet against Muslims. There are many other consequences of Islamophobia on American Muslims, such as differences in youth and education. Studies show that Muslim students are finding it increasingly harder to express their opinion and fully engage with the education system for fear of being stigmatized, stereotyped, or even penalized. Muslim identities are being securitized. You know when you're that one Muslim family at the airport delaying the whole line from continuing on past security? I think we've all been through it. Muslims are repeatedly portrayed as a security threat across many circumstances, especially involving those areas of political conflict. Not only that, but some American Muslims are in a constant dilemma of having to choose between their American identity and religious position. So there's a phrase that's been going around, it's a pretty popular phrase, it's going around Twitter and other social media. It goes, too Muslim to be American, too American to be Muslim. It's so common for some Muslims to act a certain way in front of their American friends or coworkers, and another way in front of their own people or family. For my example in 4th grade, I didn't know if people knew I was Muslim or not, but all in all, I didn't want anyone to know I was Muslim. Islamophobia is a root problem for this. There are only so many consequences I can list on the screen, and so much more that will affect each and every one of us. For the past few years, every month or so you'd see a different headline on the news. Armed protesters gather around another Texas mosque. Man suspected of setting fire to mosque, charged of hate crime. Muslim students find knives stuck in wall of their home. Muslim woman harassed at crowded restaurant. Nobody cares. Okay, this isn't working well. Okay. Before I had like a bunch of news posts everywhere, but what happened to me in 4th grade is nothing compared to what some other Muslims in the US are currently going through. Now some of you may be thinking, okay, well, what am I supposed to do about this? What is the point in telling this tale of oppression? This is not a tale of oppression. Instead, this is an opportunity for us as Muslims, as a society, as individuals, to bring awareness to these religious and social problems. For example, we can cause change by initiating values such as racial and religious equality, by knowing our rights and how to implement them properly. As for the youth, like myself, we could use our social media to educate others. Let the world know what Islam really teaches us, and utilize our platforms for good use. Not only that, but at the end, actions speak louder than words. We need to bring continuous change into our lives so that each of us can become a true representative of Islam. Many of us need to strengthen our Islamic identity. I myself am a culprit of this, and I know that in this Western world, despite the hardships we will face, we need to be comfortable in what we believe in. Not only that, but if we want to overcome Islamophobia, we first need to develop love and strength within our own Muslim communities. We need to be secure in our Islam when dealing with Islamophobes. Let's turn back to the pages of history to see how our Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam stood against the Islamophobes of their time. When the Holy Prophet started preaching, the biggest enemy of Islam was Abu Lahab. The Prophet, peace be upon him, urged the Meccans to submit to Islam and become monotheist, while Abu Lahab followed him step by step, threw stones at him, injuring him so that his feet were covered with blood. Islamophobia continues from the time of our Prophet to the time of Bibi Fatima salamun alayha, to the time of our 12 Imams, including our present-day Imam Mahdi, peace be upon him. Yet, despite the cruel, false accusations, physical torment, foul language, economic and financial pressure, boycotts, and other inhumane methods used by the enemies of that time, the Ahlul Bayt and their true followers continued to guide the people and show them the path of eternal salvation and prosperity. The Islamophobes kept on showing their bigotry against the Ahlul Bayt and their followers. But as Allah states in the Holy Quran, وَمَكَرُوا وَمَكَرَ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ خَيْرُ الْمَاكِرِينَ. And the disbelievers plotted and planned, and Allah too planned, and the best of planners is Allah. In the end, some may ask, Can we completely remove Islamophobia? No, unfortunately, we cannot. However, we, as Muslims of not just this generation, but every generation, need to learn and be equipped with how to defend justice for all, the truth, and the light of Islam, for the sake of our beloved imams, for the sacrifices they made against oppression for humanity, and for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And inshallah, we as a community can face these issues together. Thank you.